Number 20, the 2011 Los Angeles Lakers. At the time this season took place, Los Angeles was coming off of back-to-back NBA championships and appeared as if they were on a collision course with the Big Three's Miami Heat. Considering how a championship would have given Kobe his 6th championship ring and given Phil Jackson his 4th three-peat, it almost seemed like a foregone conclusion that this team would make the NBA Finals. Despite some bumps in the road, they went 57-25 throughout the regular season and defeated the New Orleans Hornets in the first round in 6 games. But in the second round, they had absolutely no answer for the perimeter onslaught of the Dallas Mavericks, as they were swept in just 4 games, including the series clincher, where they lost by nearly 40 points. Definitely a disappointing outcome for a team that many people expected to three-peat. 19. The 1973 Boston Celtics. It was a handful of years after the departure of Bill Russell, yet this Boston squad was still incredibly stacked, led by their big four of John Havlicek, Dave Cowens, JoJo White, and Paul Silas. Throughout the regular season, they appeared to be on an absolute mission to win their first championship without Russell, as they finished with a dominant 68-14 record, along with the league's #1 ranked defense. At the time, that 68 win total was the second highest in NBA history. Unfortunately, they went on to demonstrate how they still missed Russell's poise and leadership, as their success didn't translate to the playoffs. In the second round, which at the time was the East Finals, the New York Knicks, who had won 11 less games in the regular season, defeated the Celtics in 7 games, which at that point made the Celtics the most successful regular season team to fail to win a championship. 18. The 2004 Los Angeles Lakers. After the Lakers' disappointing loss to the Spurs in 2003, Los Angeles retooled in the offseason and added 2 legitimate stars to their already dynamic duo of Shaq and Kobe. Those 2 acquired stars were the championship-hungry Karl Malone and Gary Payton. With these 4 Hall of Famers in the starting lineup, Los Angeles was fully expected to dominate the league, and some even expected them to challenge the Bulls' 72-10 record. Well, that didn't exactly happen, as issues arose like Kobe's distracting Colorado trial, drama between Shaq and Kobe, and various injuries to players like Shaquille O'Neal and especially Karl Malone. The team did finish with a 56-26 record and even made it all the way to the NBA Finals. But when they got there, they were absolutely dismantled by the defensively superior Detroit Pistons, who comfortably defeated the Lakers in 5 games and thus put an official end to the Shaq and Kobe era. 17. The 2014 New York Knicks. In the prior year, the Knicks had won 54 games throughout the regular season before they were eliminated in the second round. This was a rare bright spot for a modern Knicks team, and with their star tandem of Carmelo Anthony and Amari Stoudemire returning, along with the recent Defensive Player of the Year winner Tyson Chandler, there was no foreseeable reason to expect New York to be unable to replicate their success. Well, that's exactly what happened. A team that was expected to be a title contender instead finished 8 games below 500 at 37-45, which landed them the 9th seed in the Eastern Conference, which was just short of a playoff berth. 16. The 1998 Los Angeles Lakers. This year specifically is mostly remembered because of the Bulls and Jazz matchup in the NBA Finals. But what many people often forget is that some people actually expected the Lakers to be the ones to represent the West in the NBA Finals. It wasn't without legitimate reason, as the Lakers were incredibly talented and had 4 of their players make the NBA All-Star Game, which only a handful of teams have ever accomplished. Those players were Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Eddie Jones, and Nick Van Exel. This loaded group finished with a 61-21 record and dominated the first 2 rounds of the Western Conference playoffs. But in the West Finals, the battle-tested experience of the Jazz was just too much, as they swept the Lakers out of the West Finals in just 4 games, ruining what would have been an interesting finals matchup between the 2 greatest shooting guards of all time. 15. The 2020 Los Angeles Clippers. After the surprising offseason acquisitions of both Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, many people expected this already talented Clippers team to suddenly be propelled to the NBA championship, and the Clippers themselves seemed to believe so as well. They did finish with a 49-23 record, but when the playoffs came along, little of that confidence actually translated to the basketball court, as Paul George's struggles earned him the nickname Pandemic P. As the favorite in the second round, they choked a 3-1 series lead, losing in 7 games to the much younger Denver Nuggets. And just like that, the most hyped team in Los Angeles Clippers history once again ended in disappointment. 14. The 2011 Miami Heat. This was the first year of Miami's Big Three, which was so hyped that they were the only team in league history to host a freaking concert because of how excited they were. Yes, this team did win 58 games and went on to the NBA Finals. But when you assembled LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh, arguably 3 top 10 players all in their prime, and you're predicting at least 8 titles before the season even starts, then anything short of a championship is going to be seen as a major disappointment. When the finals against the Dallas Mavericks arrived, LeBron James had easily the worst final season of his career, including Game 4, where he famously finished with a total of just 8 points. Ultimately, Dirk Nowitzki and the Mavericks vanquished the Heat in just 6 games. 13. The 2018 Oklahoma City Thunder. This was a group with championship aspirations, and based on the talent they had on paper, it seemed somewhat warranted. They were led by the reigning MVP Russell Westbrook, Paul George, Carmelo Anthony, and Steven Adams. Sadly, what looked intimidating on paper didn't translate to the court, as chemistry issues were all over the place, and the stars themselves were growing extremely frustrated with their conflicting playstyles. By the end of the regular season, they finished with a shaky 48-34 record and ended up losing the first round in 6 games to the very inexperienced Utah Jazz. Ever since this moment, all 3 of these superstar players have been dealing with narratives that have been plaguing their legacies. 12. The 2009 Cleveland Cavaliers. A team that in reality was a bit more talented than it's usually remembered for. Obviously, they were led by the league's MVP, LeBron James, who had one of his most impressive regular seasons of his career. But they also had solid contributors like Mo Williams, Zydrunas Ilgauskas, and Ben Wallace. Together, they led Cleveland to a 66-16 record, which was the greatest record in franchise history. They appeared to be on a collision course with Kobe Bryant and the Los Angeles Lakers, and the road to the finals seemingly became only easier when Boston's Kevin Garnett got a season-ending knee injury, severely crippling the chances of the defending champions. After going undefeated in the first 2 rounds, Cleveland was stunned by the underdog, the Orlando Magic, as Dwight Howard and the Magic defeated the favored Cavs in 6 games, ruining the closest chance we ever got of a Kobe vs. LeBron NBA Finals. Number 11. The 2022 Brooklyn Nets. It's a massive yet fresh disappointment, and some may think it needs to be higher on the list, but for several reasons, I think this is the perfect spot for them. This Brooklyn team obviously had tons of potential, as they were led by the 2-time Finals MVP winner Kevin Durant, who up to this postseason was basically always viewed as a big game performer in the postseason. And with a recently greenlit Kyrie Irving by his side, most of us expected better than a weak first-round exit. Durant had one of the worst series of his career and was completely outplayed by the much younger Jason Tatum. The only reason I don't have this one higher on my list is because it wasn't quite as surprising as the ones ahead of it. With all the injuries, the missed games by Kyrie Irving, the short-term appearance of James Harden, and all the chemistry issues that come with that, all under the supervision of a rookie head coach, I honestly can't justify putting them in the top 10 when the writing seemed to have been on the wall for some time now. Number 10. The 1970 Boston Celtics. This was Boston's first season after the departure of Bill Russell, and although losing their legendary center is a massive blow, they were still loaded with talent, led by a handful of Hall of Famers including John Havlicek, Bailey Howell, Tom Sanders, JoJo White, and Don Nelson. Obviously, an adjustment period was expected, but a complete and utter failure was certainly quite a shocker. The most affected area was their team defense, as they went from a perennial top 2 defensive team to the bottom half of the league. The defending champions not only finished with a losing record, but it was with an abysmal 34-48 record as they missed the playoffs entirely. In the 75 years of NBA history, this Celtics squad is one of only 2 teams to miss the playoffs as the defending champions.
Number 9, the 1994 Seattle SuperSonics.
After Michael Jordan's first retirement to go play baseball, many teams saw this as their golden opportunity to win an NBA championship, and the Seattle SuperSonics were one of those teams. Led by their highlight reel tandem of Gary Payton and Shawn Kemp, along with key contributors like Detlef Schrempf and Kendall Gill, the Sonics absolutely dominated the regular season as they were a top 3 team both offensively and defensively, while bolstering the league's best record at 63-19. In the first round, standing in their way was the young and unproven Denver Nuggets, who had won 21 less games during the regular season. After Seattle got off to a 2-0 lead, they stunningly choked away the series, losing 3 straight games to the 8th-seeded Nuggets. Since the creation of the league, this was the first time an 8th-seeded team had ever defeated a number 1 seed in the playoffs. Number 8, the 1997 Houston Rockets. Shortly after the Rockets repeated as NBA champions with their tandem of Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler, they added a third superstar to the mix, the Hall of Famer Charles Barkley. With this 3-headed monster, Houston had one of the most intimidating squads on paper that the league had ever seen. With this veteran and championship level experience, Houston finished the regular season with a 57-25 record, and eventually made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals. Unfortunately for them, that's where they ran into Malone and Stockton of the Utah Jazz. The chemistry of the Houston roster just wasn't clicking to the same extent that it was for Utah, and due to this, the Jazz eventually won the series in 6 games, and the Rockets would go down as one of the more notable Big 3 failures of all time. Number 7, the 1962 St. Louis Hawks. This Hawks squad had made it all the way to the NBA Finals in 4 out of the previous 5 seasons, and for good reason. With star players and Hall of Famers like Bob Pettit, Clyde Lovellette, Lenny Wilkens, and Cliff Hagan, St. Louis was loaded with talent as they had firmly established themselves as perennial contenders. The thing is, their star point guard, Lenny Wilkens, was called upon for military service due to the Berlin crisis, which resulted in Wilkens playing a total of 20 regular season games. Having your veteran floor general participate in only 1/4 of the season will obviously have an impact on your team, but to simply say that it had an impact would be a gigantic understatement. The talented Hawks were tremendously disappointing as they finished the regular season with an awful 29-51 record, which not only resulted in them missing the playoffs, but they were the 2nd worst team in the entire league. Definitely one of the more rarely mentioned disappointments of basketball history. Number 6, the 2014 Brooklyn Nets. Thanks to an aggressive front office, the Brooklyn Nets organization had a win-now mentality, and it resulted in a blockbuster trade that landed both Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce in Brooklyn. Rounding out the roster was plenty of talent, and on paper, Brooklyn appeared to have one of the most intimidating starting 5s in the entire league. Unfortunately for them, there's a lot more to the game of basketball than simply acquiring talent. The age was beginning to show for both Pierce and Garnett, and the team ended up finishing in the bottom half of the league defensively. Not to mention how these 5 stars missed a combined total of 129 games due to injuries. They finished with a 44-38 record in the regular season, before eventually losing in the second round in just 5 games to the battle-tested Miami Heat. Number 5, the 1984 Philadelphia 76ers. The year prior, the 1983 76ers dominated the league, and even the postseason, as they lost only 1 playoff game on their way to the NBA championship. The 83 76ers are considered as one of the greatest basketball teams of all time, and it makes sense with a lineup of Moses Malone, Julius Erving, Andrew Toney, Maurice Cheeks, and one of the all-time great defenders, Bobby Jones. So with a roster jam-packed with Hall of Fame talent, all returning the following season, you would think that they would be able to replicate some of that success. Well, they actually didn't come close. The defending champions went 52-30 throughout the regular season, before they were shockingly upset in the first round by the New Jersey Nets, who defeated them in 5 games. Simply put, Philly choked, as the entire starting unit was healthy for the playoffs, yet their defensive effort was extremely lacking, as they allowed the Nets to exceed 100 points in all 5 games. Number 4. The 2013 Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers front office shook the basketball world when they acquired both Steve Nash and Dwight Howard to go along with their already proven championship tandem of Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol. Many people were predicting this team to challenge the Bulls' 72-10 record, and an eventual NBA Finals matchup with the Big Three's Miami Heat seemed as if it was a foregone conclusion. Well, that wasn't the case, as the Lakers got off to a slow start and were having chemistry issues, and additionally, Dwight Howard didn't seem to be in his same athletic form after his off-season back surgery. They fired the head coach Mike Brown just 5 games into the regular season, and his replacement Mike D'Antoni didn't fare much better after that. Every one of the Lakers' star players dealt with injuries throughout the regular season, and right as they finally started to hit their stride just in time for the playoffs, Kobe Bryant famously tore his Achilles tendon. They finished with a 45-37 record before they were swept out of the first round by the San Antonio Spurs. Number 3. The 2007 Dallas Mavericks. After a loss in the NBA Finals to the Miami Heat in the previous season, many people viewed 2007 as the year the Mavericks would get their revenge and win the NBA championship. And for a while, it kinda looked like that was going to be the case. Dirk Nowitzki had a monstrous regular season and secured his first and only league MVP award. With a top 5 defense and the league's second best offense, these powerful Mavericks finished with a 67-15 record, which wasn't only the best record in the league, but it was easily their best record in franchise history. All of that just made it all the more stunning when they were upset by the 8th-seeded Golden State Warriors in the first round. Despite winning 25 less games over the course of the regular season, the Warriors controlled all of the energy and the momentum of the series, as they wrapped it all up in just 6 games. Nowitzki was actually awarded his MVP after the historic disappointment, which honestly made for one of the most awkward press conferences that I've ever seen. Number 2. The 2022 Los Angeles Lakers. Sure, it's recent history, but it's history nonetheless. On paper, this appeared to be one of the most overpowered teams of all time, but in reality, it was basically a dumpster fire. Playstyles were in conflict of one another, defensively they were lazy, and injuries definitely played a significant role as well. The Lakers were projected to win 52.5 games over the course of the regular season, yet they finished with only 33. That's the greatest deficit from the preseason odds that the league has ever seen. It's one thing for a team with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook to miss the playoffs, but the fact that they missed the play-in tournament altogether is a level of disappointment that I never could have imagined before the season started. Number 1. The 2016 Golden State Warriors. Ultimately, they were just 5 points short of winning the NBA championship. But when you consider the context and gravity of their disappointing failure, I can't find myself putting this team in any spot other than number 1. They were led by their star trio of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. Their franchise superstar, Steph Curry, had just won his 2nd straight MVP, which was also the only unanimous MVP award of league history. Not only were they the defending champions, but objectively, they were the best regular season team of NBA history, as they finished with a record-breaking 73-9 season. Even throughout the regular season, the media was constantly comparing this team to the 1996 Chicago Bulls, who most people consider as the greatest team ever. Little did we know how poorly that comparison would age. It's one thing for the greatest regular season team to fail to win a championship, but what adds another level of disappointment was the manner in which they failed. After building a 3-1 series lead in the NBA Finals against the Cleveland Cavaliers, Golden State managed to choke away the next 3 games straight, ultimately losing the series in 7. Heading into the playoffs, they were arguably the strongest title favorites that we had ever seen, and to fall that far after being in that kind of a commanding position is a level of disappointment that may never, ever be eclipsed. So what do you guys think? Who on the list is too low and who was too high? Let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.